How did the Battle of Homildon Hill in 1402 become the definitive showcase for Longbow vs. Schiltron technical details? The autumn air of the marches carries the scent of burning thatch as 10,000 Scots drive stolen cattle north. This great raid, led by the Earl of Douglas, seeks a final vengeance for his defeat at Nesbit Moor. The Scottish host carves a path through Northumberland, but their slow columns anchor the army to the road. This logistical burden turns a swift retreat into a predictable trap. What did the scouts report as the Scots approached the crossing? George Dunbar, the Earl of March, uses his tracking skills to monitor every mile of the Scottish advance. While the invaders gorged on northern spoils, the Percy family meticulously assembled their forces at Millfield. This location commands the road the Scots must take to reach the safety of the Tweed. When the Scottish sentries finally spot English banners, Douglas realizes his retreat is cut off. This strategic blockage forced the Scots to seek high ground. Why did the Earl of Douglas choose the slopes of Homildon Hill? Facing 20,000 men, Douglas orders his host to abandon their baggage and ascend the steep ridge. This hill rises nearly 1,000 feet, capped by the ramparts of an Iron Age hill fort. From this height, the Scottish commander believes his position is impregnable against a heavy cavalry charge. The incline serves as a natural fortification that nullifies the shock of English knights. Taking the high ground transformed the Scottish army into a static target. How did the Scottish Schiltron prepare for the coming assault? The spearmen locked their ranks into dense, circular formations, presenting a wall of 12-foot pikes to the valley. These formations had broken English chivalry at Bannockburn and remained the savior of Scottish defense. Every man-at-arms knows that an uphill charge against these pikes is a death sentence. The Scots wait, believing the terrain will force a disastrous melee. Their reliance on this static defense left the host dependent on an English frontal attack. What did Henry Hotspur Percy intend as he viewed the heights? The impulsive young commander is ready to lead his heavy cavalry directly into the Scottish pikes. He sees only the glory of the charge and the chance to crush his rivals. However, George Dunbar reaches for Hotspur's bridle, reining in the horse to prevent a tactical disaster. Dunbar understands the Scottish psyche and knows exactly how to dismantle the Schiltron without a melee. This intervention saved the English cavalry and shifted the battle to the archers. Why did the English forces move toward the neighboring ridge? On Dunbar's advice, the English army maneuvers across the dale to occupy the slopes of Harehope Hill. This movement positions the archers directly across a ravine from the Scottish lines, turning the geography into a killing zone. The Scots watch, waiting for the infantry to follow, but the English heavy cavalry remains stationary on the plain. By refusing the direct assault, the Percys forced the Scots to endure a missile duel they could not win. How did the English and Welsh archers begin their assault? Around midday, thousands of longbowmen draw their yew-bows to the ear. The speed of the longbow allows for 12 arrows per minute, ensuring the sky is constantly filled with iron. These professional bowmen begin to loose volleys that fall like a storm of rain. The Scottish Schiltrons are packed so tightly that there is no room to find cover. This initial barrage shattered the Scottish ability to respond and left the spearmen entirely defenseless. What happened when the first iron shafts reached the Scottish ranks? The arrows strike with terrifying kinetic force, transfixing the hands of the Scottish soldiers directly to their own lances. Witnesses describe the Scots as becoming bristly like hedgehogs, smothered by the volume of shafts protruding from their leather and mail. The Scottish bow lacks the range and impact to return fire effectively. Within minutes, the front ranks of the Schiltron are a mass of wounded men and broken timber. This relentless missile fire turned the static formation into a liability. Why did the Scottish morale begin to fracture on the ridge? The men-at-arms are being butchered without having struck a single blow. They watch their comrades fall in heaps, yet they are ordered to hold the static Schiltron as the arrow storm intensifies. The lack of a clear target breeds a desperate frustration among the veteran border captains. Every volley thins the ranks further, and the smell of blood fills the hill fort ramparts. This one-sided attrition destroyed the unit cohesion that was the foundation of the Scottish system. How did Sir John Swinton attempt to change the course of the battle? Realizing that standing still is a death sentence, the captain shouts that it is better to die in the melee than be shot like deer. He launches a desperate downhill charge with a small band of knights, hoping to break the archers' line. The English archers practice a disciplined retreating fire, falling back while maintaining their rhythmic volleys. Swinton's charge never reaches the English ranks, as every horse is struck down. This failed, Sally collapsed the hope of a breakthrough. Where did the Earl of Douglas place his hope for victory? Witnessing Swinton's failure, Douglas commits his main force to a charge down the steep incline. He relies on his armor, believing the mail and plate he has perfected is arrow-proof. The Scottish nobility descends in a wall of steel, expecting the bodkin points to bounce off their plate. However, the English archers maintain their focus, picking out the gaps in the advancing lines. This misplaced faith in armor led the Scottish elite directly into a lethal engagement. What was the reality of the longbow against the 3-year armor? As the Scots close the distance, the longbowmen demonstrate the terrifying physics of the bodkin point at short range. The arrows perforate helmets and pierce the most expensive plate with ease, treating steel like linen. Douglas himself is hit 5 times, including a shaft that strikes him in the face and blinds him in one eye. The supposedly invincible knights are systematically dismantled by a weapon they underestimated. This failure of the heavy cavalry signaled the end of any organized resistance. Why did the Scottish retreat turn into a massacre? The sight of their blinded commander falling causes the remaining Scots to break and flee toward the River Glen. The retreat is more lethal than the engagement, as armored men attempt to cross deep water and drown. Hotspur's knights finally ride out to collect the survivors and secure the captives. The fields known as the Red Rigs are soon littered with the dead. This chaotic rout left the Scottish military establishment hollowed out and the Percys in possession of 5 earls. What did the mass capture of Scottish nobles mean for the Percys? In the medieval market for prisoners, an earl is worth a fortune. The Percys find themselves holding the wealthiest windfall in Europe. They intend to use the ransom money to repay the £20,000 the crown owes them for border defence. Hotspur also hopes to use his captives to rescue his brother-in-law, Edmund Mortimer, from Welsh captivity. This massive accumulation of ransom wealth created a strategic leverage the Percys believed would force the king to honour his debts. How did King Henry IV react to the news of the victory at the Battle of Homildon Hill? When word of the triumph reaches Westminster, the king's reaction is defined by calculation and paranoia. He fears the growing power of the Northern Wardens who put him on the throne. Henry issues a proclamation forbidding the Percys from ransoming their prisoners, demanding the nobles be delivered to London. This order is a direct violation of the law of arms and an insult to the Percy honour. This royal demand turned a loyal victory into a poisoned grievance. Why did the confrontation at court turn violent? Hotspur arrives in London, but deliberately leaves the Earl of Douglas in the north as a gesture of defiance. In a fiery interview, Hotspur urges the king to ransom Mortimer, but Henry loses his temper and calls Mortimer a traitor. The king strikes Hotspur in the face and draws his dagger, signaling a collapse of their alliance. Hotspur turns to leave, that he will meet the king in the field. This explosion of temper destroyed the Lancastrian political foundation. How did the Tynemen and Hotspur forge an unlikely alliance? Returning to the north, Hotspur discovers a common bond with his prisoner Douglas, as both men feel betrayed by their monarchs. Hotspur realizes he cannot defeat Henry IV alone and offers to release the Scottish nobles without ransom if they join his cause. This radical realignment of border politics suspends centuries of rivalry in favor of a united front against the Lancastrian king. The two warriors begin planning a southern march to link with the Welsh rebels. This partnership transformed enemies into a unified military force. What were the terms of the secret tripartite indenture? The conspirators agree to a plan to depose Henry IV and divide England and Wales into 3 parts. Glyndwr is to rule Wales, the Percys a northern kingdom, and the Mortimers the south. This division represents the ultimate threat to the centralized Lancastrian monarchy. As Hotspur raises his banner in Cheshire, he gathers elite longbowmen for the march on Shrewsbury. This ambitious scheme to carve up the realm set the stage for the bloodiest encounter in English history. Why did the race for Shrewsbury determine the fate of the rebellion? King Henry IV, advised by the defecting Scot George Dunbar, moves with speed to intercept Hotspur before he can join the Welsh. They meet at Hatley Field, where the tactics of Homildon Hill are reversed in a fratricidal struggle. For the first time, massed longbowmen face each other on English soil, turning the air into a storm of iron. The king's centre holds despite a murderous barrage from the Cheshire archers. This tactical stalemate forced Hotspur into a desperate charge. How did a single arrow end the Percy challenge to the throne? In the height of the charge, Hotspur opens his visor and is struck in the face, killing him instantly. The Earl of Douglas is captured once more, his status as the Tyneman cemented in the chronicles. The victory at Shrewsbury secures the dynasty, but leaves the north a landscape of broken alliances. That death collapsed the uprising and restored a fragile peace. The subsequent fall of the House of Percy, the rise of the Neville family, and the early military education of the future Henry V will be the subject of another episode. Which next episode should we explore in this shifting landscape of crowns and steel? If this deep dive into the technical details of the longbow helped you understand the fragile architecture of the North, then scan the QR code visible on your screen right now to subscribe. Your support allows us to continue unearthing these decisive moments of tactical innovation and historical consequence that reshaped the British Isles. Join the series today, follow our updates, and help us decide where the narrative moves next in our journey through the history of kings and commoners.